for the most part. Really wonderful.
What about dreams? It seems like that's been a huge wave sweeping through all your sensibility as a poet.
It has, and I was, again, to go back to college for a minute, I had another teacher in college who was a poet named Edwin Honig, and he's done a lot of translations from Spanish. He's, as far as I know, still around. But he said two things to us that I remember. One was, you could write a poem, he said this to a workshop, we were a workshop. You could write a poem every day, and that I didn't do. But then he said, and you could write from your dreams. And that was like a light bulb in a cartoon, you know. I thought, oh, I could write from my dreams. Yeah. People could write from their dreams.
We can all thank him.
And, well, I thank him, yeah. I started then, and I kept a notebook, you know, by my bed. I suppose I was 21 or something. It was very important. It hadn't dawned on me.
You know from your own experience that often if someone tells you a literal dream, it cannot be the most exciting thing in the world to listen to at length. And you will find when you read this book, which is filled with dreams, that none of them is like that. So my question is, what is the transition between the raw material of the dream and the way you make art from it?
Well, I don't know. Sometimes what happens for me is that I'll get something, supposing it was, I'm making this up, but supposing it was the light green carriage. He actually had that in his book. But supposing I dreamed about Jung spinning along in a light green carriage, which I suppose I could have. But anyway, any of us do that. But then maybe I'd write that down, and then that night or that next day, try to make a poem around it, you know. It wouldn't be much in itself, but sometimes you could start there and make a poem around it. I don't have any to show you, but I have one to show you, actually. I have one to think of about that. It's the title poem from this book.
Oh yeah.
Door in the Mountain.
That's great.
I was actually staying at a place called Dorland Mountain. Now, aren't dreams smart? Door in the Mountain is what I got in my dream. I was staying at a place called Dorland Mountain. It was weeks before I made that link in my waking life. Never ran this hard through the valley, never ate so many stars. I was carrying a dead deer tied onto my neck and shoulders, deer legs hanging in front of me, heavy on my chest. People are not wanting to let me in. Door in the Mountain, let me in. Well, that's pretty much all given, you know. I didn't really think much of that one up. It's really, I am very lucky because I could have images in dreams, but I also get a lot of words.
Yeah.
So it's really, you know, wonderful. I don't know if you like that kind of thing, but that's what, I mean, you know, but dreaming and remembering them and all that kind of thing, you know, but it's been very, very helpful to me.
Just for one, the Door in the Mountain poem, I mean, to me, anytime I've tried to make that transition, there are many choices, let's say, technical maybe, that the word you don't like, but, you know, to say, how long are the lines going to be, what are you going to put in, what are you going to leave out, all of that stuff. And it seems to me that you made really breathtaking choices about those things to make that poem that way, and that's a great example of it. And that you do that in other poems that aren't necessarily dreams, like that Welsh poet one. I don't know if you remember that one.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I mean, I don't think that's a dream, right?
Yes, it is.
It is? Oh, see, it sounds like one. Wait, let me read it so that they can hear. Or you read it, yeah.
No,
it's on
you read
page 255. You sure?
I'll have to hear someone else read
okay.
this.
The Welsh poet. The Welsh poet said of his mother, who left the world last week, she was never dead, in or out of it. He shows me a beautiful Indian bird, red with yellow dots on it. Happiness, beauty, art. That bird seems to like you. Yes, that bird knows there's not much time. The mother has a gold body now.
A lot of that was dream stuff. A lot of that. And really, I kid in my family, I say I'm going to work now and go to sleep. But, a lot of these things come
That's
through
great.
me, in one night. So that just about all. I'd heard, who's the Welsh poet? The old one. Can't think of his name right now.
Thomas?
Yeah. What's his first
Dylan
name?
Thomas.
No, not Dylan
No.
Thomas. There's another one.
Oh, somebody alive now?
Mm. Do you know this old Welsh poet who's living now? I think his last name might be Thomas, because there's so many Welsh people whose last name is R.S. Thomas. Thank you. First time I heard of him, a Welshman told me about him, and he said R.S. Thomas. And so I thought it was O-R-R-I-S. R.S. Thomas, that's who I was trying to think of. And I had heard him read in Ireland, and it was such an amazing experience. He looked like Abraham Lincoln practically, very tall, very thin, and had all black clothes on, and very, very beautiful poet, and very affecting. So that dream came from that, but excuse me a second. Yeah, he never said anything about his mother or her dying. I mean, he was very old, so his mother must have died. That beautiful Indian bird. Yeah. And he said to me, the mother has a gold body now. The thing is, what's delicate about receiving, it's like a radio, I suppose, that you could turn around. You have to have it make sense as a poem, because you get details like that. But then you have to see if you can kind of, like translating almost, that you could make it hold together as a poem. And I don't honestly remember how much of that, every word, didn't come, but you sort of put down the bits you can remember and then see if you can make a poem out of them. Yeah, Kate.
One of the things that strikes me about your dream poems is that you never abandon them as dreams. That there's
Not in the poems.
you trust them entirely.
Yeah.
You say, and then I woke up, which is sort of the fatal mistake most of us
Oh, yeah,
make.
yeah.
But it seems to me that there's extraordinary trust in the material itself.
Well, when I was in Ireland, I may have told you this guy named Dennis O'Driscoll, who knows everything about poetry and became a good friend of mine in Ireland. He's a poet himself and a critic. He said, I think you should stop saying dream or I dreamed. Just leave that out, because people are going to say, why should I be interested in this woman's dreams? So just leave that out and just put the poem there. So I was rather strict about that for one of the books. I guess it was the book I was working on when he said that, whatever that was. Might have been Growing Darkness, Growing Light. Whatever it was, I took all references to dreams out of that. And then I thought, I don't know. So I put it back in. Sometimes. It's not always back in, But I thought he was right, and then I decided, well, who knows? So sometimes I still say it again. But I do trust them, you're right. I do trust them. As much as I trust anything. Yeah. You mean not to explain that it was a dream? Yeah. I do that sometimes. And sometimes I don't. Yeah.
Do you feel like that's changed over time? It seems like part of why they're so beautiful is because part of what you trust is your strangeness, your particularity, what's yours, in all its the way it is, whether it conforms to anything else or not. And it seems like if you read all the poems, that deepens over time.
Yeah, I think that does, in a lucky life.
Mhm.
I think I've had a lucky life in that way, that you come to trust whatever you're doing, especially if it's trustworthy, But, that you think, okay, not everybody's doing this, not everybody can read this, but I'm going to do it anyhow, And there'll be people who tell you, this doesn't make any sense, but,
Do you remember those crossroads earlier in your life when it felt like a struggle at all to write a way that would be acceptable in some way, or to be with your own strangeness?
I wish I did. They're so there's so many and they're so
Yeah.
small, but, you get reviews and they say, well, this is nonsense or whatever. I mean, I can't remember, but
Yeah.
you get bad reviews, if you get to the point. But you get that right now in a workshop. You get people saying, well, this doesn't make any sense, whatever they're saying,
Mhm.
and it could be anybody. And so you have to kind of hold out. But I don't remember any detailed
Yeah.
moments. I think there might be the more detailed positive moments, like I've had some good friends who believed in my work, who I really respected. And that's kind of like putting something under your pillow, You can say, well, no matter what they say in the New York Times, Adrienne likes it, or something like that, So
Right.
get one friend who you think, who you really respect, or a teacher who you really respect. That can take you a long ways.
One of the things that Fanny Howe says about this book is that what I would say about Jean Valentine's poems is that they have a relationship to the invisible, and it seems like that's a thread that goes through all of them, from the earliest ones. Do you think about that, about what that is? It seems like it's a huge, complex thing, and again, like dreams, very difficult to translate into language, and you do it beautifully.
Well, thank you. I guess I've been led, and I don't know how to talk about this really, but I think I've been led maybe partly by the poems I've loved, partly by the people I've loved, partly by the nature of our centuries now too, that I've lived in, things like that, to not be to want to be in touch with the invisible, whatever that is. I don't have a creed or anything like that, but I do really. I think this isn't everything, I think there's something behind this visible world, and I suppose Fanny does too. So she's a good person to put a blurb on my book. And I think a lot of poets do. I think someone like Creeley does, for instance. So I'm sorry not to be more articulate.
No,
than that.
not at all.
I think often that I don't write essays, and I don't write reviews, and I don't like to give talks, and part of the reason is that I trust my intuition very deeply, and I don't think I'm very good at rational thought. So rational thought is what's often asked for when you're in a situation like this. I don't mean you. No, I don't mean you. But I mean, people want you to write, but they also, and in teaching I didn't find that was a problem. But I might have if I hadn't been teaching in such a sympathetic place as Sarah Lawrence, all the places I've taught actually. But if I'd have had to major in English and teach literature, I would have had trouble. But I feel okay about that. But an occasion like this makes me a little apologetic that I'm not more articulate.
Don't be. Can I read a little bit of something again? So speaking of the invisible, I was exclaiming and reading these out loud at home, and someone said to me that they thought this was one of the most beautiful prayers they'd ever heard. And it's the end of a poem called What Happened. It's quite a long poem, and this is just the last stanza. Once I was talking to a friend, a religious man, about the closeness of friendships in childhood, and he said, what you're talking about is God. Mercy on our gropings, our silences, our harm,